one thing just to add for anyone who thinks that they might be, leading up to something
Mhm.
like this, I think one of the biggest things that I realized from all of this was that mindset wasn't everything.
Yeah.
And I had been practicing that mindset and I had been reframing my stress. And I was like, I can master my emotions and I can get through this and I can power through this. And my body just went, time out. That's
Yep.
enough. Like my body was like, not going to take any more of that.
Welcome back to the Executive Exhale podcast, folks. I'm really excited to have our guest on today. Her name is Rachael Edmondson-Clarke. She's a powerhouse, comes from leadership psychology and human performance. She has more than 2 decades of experience. She's helped senior leaders, Fortune 500 companies, and fast growth businesses not just perform, but thrive without hitting that wall of burnout. She brings together science and strategy, drawing on neuroscience, behavioral change, and executive coaching tactics to completely reframe what it means to lead well in high pressure spaces while not burning out in the process. She's also the former regional president of the Professional Speaking Association in the UK and Ireland. And today she's here to share real practical insights for unlocking energy, confidence, and sustainable impact. And more importantly, to share her story of recovering resilience and why she does what she does today. Rachael, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you.
Tammy, I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yes, absolutely. I was sort of enamored by your story. I went immediately to your link tree and watched the video. You have a 5-minute video on there about your story that you were speaking at an event, and I was struck by the full collapse story. So I really want to focus on that today because I feel as though a lot of us out there who are in the executive world are walking that line, trying not to have the full crash and burn, but feel more and more every day like we're sinking. We keep swimming and we just keep sinking. And
Yeah.
so I wonder if you can share so folks can get to know who you are, your origin story as to what brought you to this work. Tell us about that day and where you are now.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I so associate with that.
Mhm.
That day, I can remember the day vividly. So I was in my glass-fronted office and I was preparing to go into the boardroom. And instead of walking out the door, I found myself lying on the floor and staring up at the ceiling tiles. I'd collapsed. I couldn't think.
Mm.
I couldn't breathe. It was a real scary and incredibly low moment for me. I later realized that what I had experienced was a panic attack, but at the time I had no idea what was happening to me, and it hit me like an absolute brick wall. Over not even months, I think it would have been over years, I had adopted habits that had left me depleted from just working longer and longer hours, constantly thinking to myself, well, if I just get over this hump, if I just fill the gap with my team here, and if I get that recruitment, I get that person underway, if I can just make it to this weekend or to this, to this next holiday. And I was constantly just doing that. My answer to it all was just to work harder and longer hours. I was no stranger to switching the lights on in the office in the morning and switching them off at night, being
Right.
the first and last person in at that building. And and I was the habits. So I disrespected really my body and my biology and what that was saying to me, and the most important relationship in my life at that time. I mean, I this is how crazy this is, and I kind of can't even believe I'm saying this to you now, but I delayed our wedding twice because of work commitments. I was like, oh, it's just too busy. Oh, we've got this launch, we've got that launch. It's just like the wedding's just not going to work within the work schedule around this. Like, that sounds insane to me now, like hearing those words come from my mouth. But at the time, it kind of made sense.
Yeah, I 100% relate to that. It's the illusion of productivity, right? We feel as though, and I did the same thing, the more I felt anxiety, the more productive I would throw myself into work or get more things done because it temporarily relieved that feeling of being out of control by becoming in control of the things I was doing. But what it
Yeah.
was actually doing was adding more to that sense of discomfort and panic that was coming in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
We absolutely get as well, don't we? You know, like when you just get, I think the other thing is you get this dopamine hit, you
mhm.
know, that when you know, that pushes us to kind of to do more, and it can become a bit obsessive and it can become a bit compulsive, and it's like, oh yes, all right, I've done that and I've got that, and you get that hit, and then that kind of drives you further. But it's a dangerous cycle. It can be a very dangerous cycle.
What parts of your physical form were you ignoring? And the reason why I triggered on that is because for me, the stress was I stopped exercising because I was focusing on work. I stopped taking care of myself, and I'm still trying to recover, shed the weight that I had gained over that period of time. And it really threw my metabolism out for a loop because of all the bad choices I was making at that moment in time. And I say bad choices, there's no good or bad choices. They were choices, but they were
Yeah.
choices. I was choosing work over my own personal health and well-being, my own relationships. So maybe dive a little deeper into that. What were some of the whispers that you were seeing and hearing of yourself that you were ignoring, that you were just shedding?
Mm. Um, I think nutrition and food
Mm,
and regularity of food was a big one. So again, if I look back now, one of the things I often remember doing would be shoveling some food in my mouth whilst I walked around the office to be trying to deal with
yeah.
something or other.
Yeah.
You know, and so just that sheer irregularity of it. And if it hadn't have been for my now husband, because thankfully I did marry him eventually,
Congratulations.
he was. I didn't run away too many more times. No, he's amazing. He's amazing. We've been married 13 years now. And he loves to cook.
Right.
So I was very fortunate that I would always have a good meal in the evening. But the breakfast and the lunch, it might be quite yeah, haphazard as to what that was, when that was. Sleep would be hugely impacted because I would be working really late and no stranger to coming home from the office and then maybe switching the laptop on and doing a little bit more or picking up the phone and seeing something else. And movement would be, well, it's not just movement. Do you know what? Daylight and nature, Tammy. I'm going to say huge inputs to our mood and our energy and our ability to deal with stress. And I love the outdoors. I know we were just talking, I've been swimming in a lake this morning, and it's a beautiful day here in England. And I absolutely love that. But I was taking really no time at all to move my body, get out in daylight, get out in nature.
Nature is medicine. I
Oh,
don't think people understand. Our
God.
indigenous brothers and sisters around the world understood and understand this.
Yes.
It is utter medicine. So one of the things that I do every day, and there's no way that my 15 ago person would have even been into. I would have been like, whatever, hippy dippy stuff, right? I actually earth every day with
Oh,
my feet planted on the soil, and spend time in quiet, in silence in my yard. And the reason for doing that is because it helps me feel more grounded and connecting with something greater than myself, the planet, right? And so I think that if there's a few takeaways, this is one, folks. Go out in nature, get outside, spend time in the sunshine, put your sunscreen on, but spend time in the sunshine and just connect with nature as much as you can. Yeah, it's
massively
so
so.
important.
I had a real stark contrast a few weeks ago. So um, I was on holiday with my parents, and we've now got two boys and my husband. Very fortunate. We were off to Turkey, and we were in a all-inclusive hotel, beautiful hotel, an
Mhm.
abundance of food, and actually in some ways there was so much consumption there. It was a little bit like, oh, I'm not, kind of.
Yeah,
I was a bit like, hang on a minute.
yeah.
but the stark contrast was coming back to the UK, and the day after flying back, I took the boys who were still on their half-term break to go and climb one of the biggest. It is only a hill, but it's a pretty big hill near us. It's called Kinder Scout, and it's in a beautiful part of the Derbyshire countryside, called the National Peak District, and it's a beautiful, beautiful walk. Sadly, the youngest was sick in the car on the way there, and made a right old good mess of things. And I had the eldest one with his head out the, like hanging out the
Yeah,
window,
yeah.
going,
Try
"Mommy,
not to
I'm
get
going to be
sick.
sick now if I can smell this anymore." And it's one of those single track, little tiny, lanes that we have in England. There's nowhere to pull over, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking, "Oh my gosh." Anyway, my point is, even in spite of the sickness, the little one donned on his rucksack and
Yeah.
ate my bread and butter, and kind of they were calling it a mountain, up the mountain we went. But we climbed up past natural waterfalls and through beautiful gorges, and then up to the top where the views were just absolutely incredible. And we were out for about 6 hours with incredibly sore feet, kind of coming towards the end of it. But oh my gosh, the contrast between the high consumption in the in the Turkish all-inclusive resort, to being out in nature and
Mm.
up Kinder Scout. I remember coming back down and just feeling like my soul is restored from being out here. And it was such a contrast for me between the two environments, and just, yeah.
Yeah. The level of awareness you get in nature is just unbelievable, and I think we've lost track with that, especially if we work in a corporate environment, but I find it in North America, I can't really speak for Europe, but I know in North America, we struggle with getting out in nature because people are so busy being cooped up in their offices all day, and when you work those 12 and 14-hour days, it kinda eludes us to get out there. I wanna circle back to that moment because you've had the collapse, you're in your office, the story goes that you were on the floor of your office, you've collapsed, you're looking up at the ceiling tiles, and you're kind of like, "Okay." So, walk us through those initial days and weeks when that first happened, because again, I suspect that if someone's listening to this, they are either on the brink of, or they've just had a breakout of some sort, breakdown rather, and they're just looking for what's the next steps? How do I move forward through this? So just give us a sense of those first few days and weeks after that event. What sort of went through your mind? What was sort of the process for you as you were trying to figure out what just happened?
Yeah. And I think one thing just to add, for anyone who thinks that they might be, leading up to something
Mhm.
like this, I think one of the biggest things that I realized from all of this was that mindset wasn't everything.
Yeah.
And I had been practicing that mindset, and I had been reframing my stress, and I was like, I can master my emotions, and I can get through this, and I can power through this. And my body just went, time out. That's
Yep.
enough. Like, my body was like, not gonna take any more of that. And
Mhm.
so I felt very much like, I felt like life was, it's an odd analogy thing to say, but I felt like life was slapping me around the face with a great big wet fish, going, "Wake up."
Yeah.
Like, you cannot keep doing that. And actually, in the moments after I was able to collect myself, breathe enough to sit to get myself to my feet again, the first thing I did was to go and get some help from somebody I trusted in the business, because I was still meant to be going into the boardroom, right? I,
Yeah.
and I couldn't think. I couldn't think straight. I didn't know what I was trying to do, and they helped me through those initial few moments. But I remember thinking, this can't go on, very distinctly. Just something has to change. This is not good. And I didn't know what the answer to that was initially, but it did make me brave enough to have the conversation with my director, and to say, like, this is not good, this is not good. And what ultimately ended up happening was that together I worked with the director to restructure the team, And the team that I had been the head of, I actually went back into, and we we recruited somebody with more experience, and yeah, just somebody with a lot more experience to be able to do the role that had been growing and growing whilst I had been in it. And that was really tough. One of the things that's, it sounds very, and was very status driven,
Mhm.
but was a very visual symbolization to everyone around, and felt really hard for me, was that it, the offices were they were open plan offices with these glass fronted offices just for the senior leaders around the edge. And so one of the things that I did over the months ahead was to move out of that office, in back into the open plan space, which
Mm.
of course everybody in the entire company could see. There were, I remember saying to this, I remember apologizing to the CEO. I felt like I'd let him down. I felt like I'd let the company down, the team down, that I hadn't been good enough in some way. And so there was an immense amount of, I think, guilt and shame, and things that came with this, whilst also recognizing it was the right thing for me and for my body, and I needed to take this time and I needed to do this.
I really struggled with the same sort of feelings, that sort of, I would call it a bit of a light ego death, because you now have to recognize that the voice that you were hearing from your body all this time that you were ignoring and shoving down with mindset tools and tricks and tactics just wasn't working anymore. And coming to that conclusion, you do feel a bit like a failure. You feel like somehow this didn't work out for me and maybe there's something wrong with me, when in fact it's nothing wrong with you. It's your environment that is not cohesive to wellness. It's not connected to that.
Correct. Yes.
Um, and so I think I just want to offer to anyone out there who's listening that if you're feeling these feelings, know that that's completely normal,
Oh
and
yes.
you're not alone. This anyone who's gone through this understands this, and this is not. And I want to be very clear about this for those listening. This is not a gender thing either. This is not a woman versus men. I have clients who are men who are going through this right now, who struggle, and it's even harder in some ways for them because they are supposed to be these big tough guys, and it's even tougher for them to admit the vulnerability of, "Hey, you know what? This environment is just not it's just not does not allow for me to feel well in my body. It
No.
just does not allow for that." So then as you started to go through your recovery process, walk us through some of the things that you talked about some of the changes in the office, but where else in your life did you have to make changes in order for you to start feeling well again, to start feeling like yourself again, like you could trust yourself to not have another anxiety attack?
Yeah. No. Well, for me, that moment. So there's a couple of distinct moments. There was that moment not long after I'd got off the floor where I felt like life was slapping me around the face with the wet fish, and I was like, no more, no more. There
Right.
was another moment. I can remember getting ready for work one morning, and I was stood in the shower, and it was just like there was this whisper on my heart, and it was like I'd been ignoring it for so long. And
Mm.
it was in that moment when I was in the shower that I remember so vividly, like turning to it and going, what are you saying? What is it that you're saying to me? And essentially, it was saying, I was made for more, and that this wasn't necessarily, where I was meant to be. And I remember saying, but where am I meant to be? Like, what am I meant to do? And the honest answer was, like, I didn't know, and the voice didn't know at that point. But when my feet hit the bath mat as I stepped out of the shower that morning, I'd made a decision that I no longer wanted a job or a career, but I wanted to find work that felt like a life's mission, and that I knew I would be able to jump out of bed every day knowing that I would love what I was doing. And so now I was on this quest to kind of go, okay, so what is that?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Oh, it's and that was no straight line, I can tell you. But I remember being open, and I remember just exploring different things with excitement and possibility, like peering through metaphoric archways, if you like, and going, "Oh, do I like what's behind there? If I do, I'm going to follow it." And just I think following my heart and what was lighting me up, and I can remember one of the first things that I kept noticing time and time and time again, was a health coaching qualification. So it was with the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. It's a big organization. Some of your listeners may well be aware of it. And, and I'm going back maybe 15 years ago now.
Mm.
Um, but I was like, okay, I want to do this. And I want to do this for myself because I want to understand more about my own body and my own health. And so I started doing this integrative nutrition health coaching qualification, learning over 300 different dietary theories, and experimenting and being almost a scientist of myself with my own body, and working out what it liked from a hydration and a nutritional point of view. And of course, I started shedding, the weight that I had put on, and all of a sudden people were looking at me in my work environment. And yeah, I wasn't in the glass fronted office, but this girl had a completely different aura and energy around her. And people were like, hang on a minute, what happened to you? And I want some of that.
Yeah.
And that happened around about the same time that the course was starting to transition from the nutritional knowledge and skills into the coaching side of things. And they'd said to us, if anyone's interested in what's happening or the transformation that they're seeing in you, just book a consultation. And I remember being petrified, thinking, well, I wouldn't know what to do at a consultation or what to do afterwards. But the course was like, we've got you. Well, like, we're going to help you. Don't you worry. Just book the consultation. Anyway, the long and short of all of that was that I found myself fully booked doing health coaching in the evenings outside of my 9 to 5 corporate job, and absolutely loving doing that. But if anyone's listening to this, depending on where you are on your journey, one of the ways I can often remember the way that this felt for me at the time was like, it was like I was at the edge of a misty lake, and I like, in my heart, I knew that there were stepping stones across this lake, but the mist was so thick and so
Mhm.
dense that all I could see was the first stepping stone. And you just have that faith to take that first step and trust that then a little bit more of the mist and the fog will clear, and you'll see the next one. And then eventually you see more and more and more, and you can see more of that journey. But it's having that trust and that faith just to take those steps, those initial steps, and just to explore that. Yeah, I think it's really important.
So I feel like I could talk to you for hours because we have a very similar story. And obviously we may have to have you back on to talk about different components of this journey. But I wonder though, if someone's listening to this and they're thinking about, they see the step, and using your analogy, they see that step, they want to step on it, they're afraid to because they're not sure. I know for me, I was very much a control freak as an executive. I needed to know the next steps, the strategy, what I was going to do, and I'm still to some degree a control freak. And so when you're in that mindset, there's a lot of fear associated with going into the unknown. So what would be a thing you might suggest for people to help them to take that first step today? And then of course, we'll talk about where people can reach out to you if they really want help with this and want to connect with you. But just today, for sake of argument, what might be one thing that somebody could take to sort of build that trust to be able to take that next step?
Well, so Tammy, I know this will be something that is, a huge part of the work that you do as well, and that's recognizing that, the fear doesn't necessarily go away. And I think sometimes we are looking for that confidence, that clarity, or that element of control, as you speak about. And what I would say is, perhaps add courage to that mix.
Mm,
And I think when you're mapping that journey, there are obviously some very sensible questions that you can ask yourself. And there are some steps that you may be able to take that means that you're not burning all your bridges, or, you're not putting either your family or yourself at any sort of huge financial risk, but you're able to maybe take some smaller steps to
Mm.
help confirm, is this the right thing for me, before you take the big leap. But I do think in a way life tests you, because I can remember deciding that leaving corporate was what I really wanted to do. And so, to help me with that control and that planning, I got a career coach. I remember the career coach saying to me, Rachel, do you think there'd ever be an opportunity for you to have to take redundancy in your organization? I said, I really don't, I can't imagine that happening. But lo and behold, several months later, I'm called into a meeting, and what should happen? But I get this opportunity to take redundancy. I'm looking all forlorn in the meeting with the HR person and my manager at the time. But the next thing, I'm like out in the car park, bursting through the sunroof, like talking to my husband, going, "I can't believe it!" I'm super, super excited. But here's the thing: it was the day before I was about to sign those papers to agree to that redundancy package, and we found out that I was pregnant with our first child.
Right. Isn't that the way?
So I think life has a way of testing you. Like, you think you want this, you think you want this. Like, do you really want this? So I'm just throwing that there in the mix, because that was certainly how life tested me. And sure enough, I still made the decision to have a real baby and start my business as a, its infancy at the same time. I did it, but it's yeah. I think life can test you, so just be ready for that, I think.
Yeah, there's a few really good nuggets in there. If you need help, obviously seek out coaching or support in doing that. Have a plan. I know for me, very briefly, when I decided about 8 months before I actually left my 9 to 5, I decided I was sort of done. I needed to do something else. And I remember on a whim, when I was on my medical leave because of my stress, physical ailments I was having during that time, I remember taking a coaching program, an executive coaching program. I thought, oh, not only could I do this, but I think I could actually get paid doing this. And now suddenly the light bulb went off. And then I was in a retirement course for the public service, and they were talking about how I could withdraw, my pension. I was 49 before the age of 50. And I thought, oh, that could give me the runway I need. And all the things started lining up. And so sometimes just taking the course, going to that program, learning about it, going to a coach, having a few conversations, it just helps to enlighten you just enough so you can figure out what your 18-month, 24-month plan might look like for you to start looking at what is your exit strategy, if that's what you want. And by the way, you don't have to dump your whole career. And
No, no,
that's
no,
the
no,
message that
no.
Rachel and I both want to share
Mm,
today. You don't
mm.
need to do like us. You don't need to leave your corporate job to be happy. There are different choices, but it's for us, for me at least, that's what it took, because I wanted to realign with connecting with people more deeply and not just work in a policy shop, right? So Rachel, just based on what we've discussed today, and if people are really resonating with your energy and they want to learn more about you and they want to know what your programs are that you have on offer, where can they look for you?
Best place would either be my website, which is Elevar, spelled ELLEVAR.co.uk, or connecting with me on LinkedIn.
Perfect. I will have all of the connections, the links in the show notes, folks. Please connect with Rachel. Go watch her 5-minute video on her story. It's a captivating video. It can tell that you were the president or co-president or whatever it was, former regional president of the Provincial Speaking Association, because your speaking is perfect. Like, you've got
Oh,
this storytelling down pat. It's awesome. But yeah, do connect with Rachel, please. And take advantage of all of the things she has on offer, because she's here to help you. Thanks again for being here. I
absolutely.
really appreciated our conversation.
Tammy, I've loved it. I really have. Thank you for having me on the show.
Perfect. And for those that are here and you're still listening, thanks again for listening to the Executive Excel podcast. I really do appreciate you being here every day. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, do all the things, because it really does help push this content out to other leaders just like you who are looking to hear from people like Rachel on these topics. Again, folks, until we meet again, until we watch this again, Stay inspired, stay grounded, and remember to exhale.